Hello, everyone. My name is Carolyn Harley. I'm a singer-songwriter, storyteller, and late bloomer. And I fell in love with the story of the Famous Five when I first moved to Calgary back in 1986. And I started teaching preschool at Nellie McClung Elementary School. A few years later, I was part of a project to celebrate Calgary's 100th anniversary. And so I researched Nellie McClung and the Famous Five to write a song for that project. And that's when I became a great fan of these five amazing Alberta women. I was impressed by their determination in the face of adversity and disappointment. And I loved how they worked together in spite of the fact that they didn't agree with each other on all the issues of the day. And lastly, I was very impressed with the fact that they were late bloomers. These were not young women when they set out on this journey to personhood, but they persevered, they worked together, and they finally won the person's case. And this decision changed the definition of the word person in the BNA Act to include women. And what an amazing accomplishment. And so in honor of the Famous Five, this is my song, The Ballad of the Famous Five. Emily Murphy, Henrietta Muir Edwards, Louise McKinney, Irene Harleby, and Nellie McClung carved a place in the history of Canada's nation. The Famous Five changed the face of our land. They were born in a time that seemed so benign, when ladies were seen but not heard, fair of face and in their place, when meekness was mostly preferred. The five looked around, and everywhere they found the world revolved around men. They said we must fight what is not right, no matter who we may offend. Five women united, and united we're strong. Five women said, now we've begun. They rallied the nation for all generations and fought till the battle was won. Women wanted a voice and a say in the choice of the matters affecting our land. They didn't believe they shouldn't achieve every right freely given to men. So arm in arm from the cities and farms, their voices joined and were heard. Hand in hand, the women of this land fought the fights, won the rights they deserved. Five women united, and united we're strong. Five women said, now we've begun. They rallied the nation for all generations and fought till the battle was won. And fought till the battle was won. Emily Murphy, Henrietta Muir Edwards, Louise McKinney, Irene Harleby, and Nellie McClung. Heroes of mine, the Famous Five.
Thank you, Carolyn. Thank you, Carolyn. As everybody knows, The Ballad of the Famous Five is a song that I love. And it's a song that hopefully brings back good memories of what's happened over the past 25 years with the Famous Five Foundation. Because today we are celebrating not only a Famous Five Friday, which this Friday is, but it's also the start of 25 year or celebration for the Famous Five being 25 years old. And it's also the start of Canadian Women's History Month too. So thank you all very much for coming today. I hope you will continue to chat in the chat room and bring us together, because we are sprinkled all across Canada. We are going to hear a song by Brianna Burke from Saskatchewan, from Saskatoon, at the end of this program, based on Nellie McClung's mock parliament, which asked the question, why should men have the vote? And her song is called Women. And if you have a song about the Famous Five, or about a woman or a group of women that you feel we should be sharing with others because it pays tribute to them or inspires others to be leaders, please send it to us, because we're happy to share it with everybody. And since we last met, we've had, of course, a federal election. And one of the things that the Famous Five are famous for, and we are grateful for, is women having the right to vote. Well, we have more women than ever before going to be sitting in the House of Commons. They will form 30% of our MPs. This is the highest ever. So now we still have a little more work to do, because we want to get to 50%, or maybe 55%, or maybe 80%. But yesterday was our first National Day for Truth and Reconciliation. And both the Government of Canada's ceremony Wednesday evening and yesterday's ceremony, both on Parliament Hill, that commemorated survivors, were led by women, by fabulous warrior women. It's so exciting to see the number of chiefs, Indigenous chiefs, that now are women. And of course, the Grand Chief for the Assembly of First Nations is Roxanne Archibald, a woman. So thank you very much for the Indigenous sisters who are coming to the fore and leading us towards truth and reconciliation. They spoke their truth yesterday. They also talked about healing and the fact that hand in hand, we will go towards reconciliation. Today, our virtual pink tea, like our other virtual pink tea conversations, is presented by Enbridge, our longtime sponsor. And we are very pleased that they send representatives who are excellent role models for us. And today the role model is a favorite of mine. It's Gina Jordan. Gina is the manager of corporate citizenship for Enbridge, and she strengthens communities, helps them to prosper. And she does this through building stronger communities, enabling charities and not-for-profit organizations to tell their stories, to work with people to improve situations. She does this through donations, through sponsorships, and also engaging Enbridge employees. Gina walks the talk. She's a dedicated community builder and is on many boards. And today she's absolutely delighted to be here on the shoulders of the trailblazing women in her family, and as a friend of the women that we are featuring today. So Gina, thank you very much for Enbridge's ongoing support and for your support too. And please lead on, please introduce our panel for today at our virtual pink tea conversation.
Thank you, Frances. It is such a pleasure to be here today on behalf of Enbridge, and I am especially honored to join the celebrations of the 25th anniversary of the Famous Five Foundation. I am also very proud to say that Enbridge has been a partner for 20 of those 25 years. We wholeheartedly believe in strengthening our relationships with communities, championing the development and recognition of Canada's female leaders, and the importance of sharing their inspiring and motivating stories like we'll hear today. Just 3 short years after their launch, the Famous Five Foundation unveiled the beautiful Women Are Persons Monument in Calgary's Olympic Plaza to commemorate the 70th anniversary of the Persons case on October 18th, 1999. The following year, a very similar monument was unveiled on Parliament Hill in Ottawa. Since then, these monuments have become beloved, important icons and remain the first and only permanent monuments to commemorate the role of Canadian women as nation builders. The Famous Five Foundation reviewed the portfolios of both male and female sculptors, and a national jury selected Barbara Paterson's stunning proposal. This graduate of the University of Edmonton earned a Bachelor of Fine Arts with a major in sculpture. The impact of her art has been felt amongst generations of Canadians. Following the unveiling of the Famous Five monuments, many individuals and organizations commissioned Barbara to bring their projects to life. Hopefully you've seen her statue of Emily Carr with her monkey near the Empress Hotel in Victoria, or perhaps you visited her statue of Dr. Moses Cody in Antigonish, Nova Scotia. But Barbara's artistic mark can also be appreciated beyond our borders, as she has participated in exhibitions from Bulgaria to Singapore. I'm also so very proud to introduce Anne McCaig, who together with her daughters, Roxanne and Jane, were the very first funders of the Women Are Persons monuments. Anne is an acknowledged and extraordinary community leader and a distinguished citizen from coast to coast. She has inspired generations of women, including myself, through her compassion, dedication, and love for our communities, which is demonstrated in all her philanthropic endeavors. Her record as a volunteer is spectacular and includes leading fundraising efforts for numerous educational and arts initiatives and institutions across Canada. As a result, Anne has been the recipient of many prestigious awards, including an Order of Canada, and has been given the name White Wolf Woman by a Blackfoot elder in recognition of her support for Alberta's First Nations people. Our VIP host today is Roxanne McCaig, one of Anne's accomplished daughters. Roxanne earned a degree in art history from the University of Victoria, and for the past 25 years has been focused on learning more about artists, their art, and supporting them. Roxanne has served on the board of the Alberta University of the Arts, the YWCA of Calgary, the Branching Out Neurological Foundation, and is currently serving on the board of the Walrus Foundation. These three role models are truly inspiring, and I'm looking forward to hearing from them. Thank you, everyone, and over to you, Roxanne.
Good afternoon, everyone. I am just thrilled to be here today. I feel very fortunate to be in discussion with two women who inspire me. These women have an amazing amount of courage and determination and drive, and I just can't wait to dive into the questions. So I'm going to begin with Anne McCaig, or my mom, as I should say. And I wanted to ask Anne what it was that, how did she decide to be the first person to fund the Famous Five Foundation monument? Go ahead, Anne. Mom.
Thank you, Roxanne, daughter Roxanne. I was motivated to support the monument because it was a good idea and it was very well researched. I have a lot of confidence in Frances Wright and her leadership. I know she had done her research and she would need someone to be first to support the vision. Someone has to say this is a good idea and to be the first to give, and by doing so encourage others to do the same thing. And I was happy to be that person because I believe wholeheartedly in the project. I trusted Frances and all the work she had done to bring the idea to fruition. My experience has been that if your project is something people care about and believe in, and you've done your research, it's not that hard to get others to commit to their support. I want to thank Frances for bringing this opportunity to the forefront. I immediately recognized that this was something worthy of support. It's part of our history that we do not want to forget.
Thanks, Anne. Mom. And then I have, I'm going to move and now ask Barbara a question, but I have 3 photographs ready to go that will help just remind you of how beautiful these sculptures are. The first photograph is a sketch, an idea sketch. And we'll just run the 3 more and just remind you how wonderful they are. Thank you. Barbara working away. And that, of course, is the maquette that was created. And there's all 5 women and all their individual expressions in the red wax. Fantastic. So Barbara, I very much admire the composition of the whole entire piece. Can you tell me what the inspiration that informed the layout of the sculpture?
The inspiration really came from artistic training, in that to do a composition, you have to have, for instance, with the sculpture, you like to have people at different levels, some sitting, some standing. You have to have a variety of clothing, and that's why I had 2 of the women supposedly coming in from outdoors, so they had outdoor clothing. And the idea of a circle was, they just automatically got into the circle themselves. Can I say that? They just, actually, in individualizing, they became their own personalities, but then became each other's people to work off and to engage in. So it really built itself, in that if something didn't work, well, then let's make it a little move here. So it was fun to see it develop, but it was scary to know, is it really going to develop like that? One thing to see the small maquette with the 5 women and their tables and furniture, and then to all of a sudden have these large figures. And for the first time in the backyard of the foundry, we actually placed these big women in their positions, and my goodness, it worked. They were staring, they were engaging, they were just, it was magic for sure.
Thanks, Barbara. I agree with you that it's magic. The fact that each character, each woman interacts with another woman and interacts with the whole story. And I love the circular and the idea that you achieve welcoming an audience into the work. And the idea with the chair, and I can come in and I can sit down and I can touch these and I can learn from them and be inspired. That's fantastic. All right, Anne, what about you? I know that you proposed you would be the first donor, but then you suggested to Frances that you'd like to bring your daughters. So tell me why it was important that you had both my sister Jane and I involved.
Well, I love that question, Roxanne, because Frances may blush a little when I talk a little bit about this answer, because when I said I would like to do this, but I'd like to involve my daughters, Frances Wright actually said, no, I don't think so. Frances, do you remember that? Anyway, she took it back to her board, and of course, that they discussed it, because it was supposed to be individual people. They discussed it, but I've always believed in the importance of involving my family in the things that I'm doing and in the things that I believe in. And this was one of those type of projects. I didn't certainly want to tell my daughters what to do, Roxanne and Jane, what to do, but I did want to inspire them to consider their own involvement and how they could support. And they made up their own minds about getting involved, and they did so because they believed in what Frances Wright's vision was and what we all wanted to accomplish. But it was also a special opportunity for me as a mother to have my daughters alongside with me and to share such a powerful story that would inspire women and girls to stand up for what they believe in, just as the Famous Five did. The Famous Five had to champion their cause, and that is exactly how I felt and how my daughters, Roxanne and Jane, felt about the monument. It would not have happened without champions, and we were pleased to be the first to champion this cause.
Well, thanks. I personally was very fortunate that you did come to me, and I'm sure Jane would echo the same sentiment. The things that I learned about the Famous Five, and I learned about the Famous Five Foundation, and then being to watch them unveil both in Calgary and then going to Ottawa was just such a wonderful experience to me. And they talk about, when the things you receive, if you give and receive in that relationship, and it was a wonderful time for me. Barbara, it's your turn. And I know that you often put a dog in your sculptures. And I didn't know that, so I haven't gone looking. So I wondered, artists work very hard and put all of themselves into their projects. But I do know that artists sometimes put in little tidbits of themselves hidden. Can you tell us, did you do that? And can you tell us a little bit about that? If you
certainly can, and of course I did. And loving it. The dog, most of my sculptures did have dogs involved with it. Emily Carr and the other ones that just dogs were part of it. So that's where I got the idea. But I didn't think the Famous Five Foundation would like it if all of a sudden a dog arrived on the spot and for no reason, just to have this animal there. So I thought that's a little over the hill. I thought and tried to figure out where the most hidden yet able to be seen would be. And I chose the brooch that sits on Henrietta Muir Edwards, the one holding the teacup. And the brooch was, I thought if I could just do a little, like a portraiture of a dog, that might, I could get away with that. Fortunately or unfortunately, my husband came to visit me on the weekend, and I had the picture of our dog on it, but not trying to look like a dog. And I said, do you know who this is or what this is? And he said, is it me? Which was, of course, the worst possible thought. So I thought I better change it slightly. And instead of a portrait of a dog, I have a seated dog facing towards the audience. And it's a little distorted because I really was afraid that Francis would come up and say, you put a dog on this. So I tried to hide it, but I think you can, it's identifiable.
Now, if I'm right, you also have something special on the back of the newspaper that represents your family, your mother and daughter relationship. Is that correct?
That's true. Seeing as how you have this lovely relationship with your mom, mine has worked as well. My mother and father were married on the same, not on the exact same date, but in the same year of the Famous Five. And in order to put the printing on the back of the newspaper that Nellie is holding up, I thought I can't just have a bunch of crazy words that are meaningless. So I looked up my mother's wedding announcement, and there it was. Lo and behold, every detail. And in those days, they really detailed weddings. They were describing people as singing sweetly, and it was just unbelievable. So I gave it a try, had the foundry prepared in wax, put it on, turned it into metal. I don't think Frances said, did you know about this, Frances, through the time? Yeah, I think that she was keeping me under control. But it read and does read perfectly. You can read the whole article. And so the thrill of my mother's life was that she was on Parliament Hill. Like, maybe you could do that for your mom sometime too, Roxanne. I think she would love it.
Oh my goodness, I would love to have an image of my mother up on Parliament Hill, and I could get you to sculpt it for her.
Absolutely. After all, I do that sort of evil stuff.
Now, just one last thing on this topic, because we are talking about mothers and daughters. So I was thinking about, the past, the present, and the future. You also put, I believe, your grandchildren, the future, into the sculpture.
I did. It started with, we have a granddaughter, Emily, and I thought, well, I should put her name underneath the skirt just to just to sort of as a treat that she would know. And then I thought, no, well, why would that happen? I had 5 grandchildren at that point. And I thought, why wouldn't I put their name on each and every one of them? So if you were to look by the left leg under the skirts, it's easier if you take a photo. Just put your iPad under and take a photo. But the 5 grandchildren are all written there. And that really, it gave me great pleasure because the kids just loved it. In fact, I think they were afraid that they were going to be arrested by the park police or somebody looking under the skirts of the famous 5 at a tender age. And so I think it worked out. And I'm very pleased that I did that.
No, that's fantastic. Well, I always think that those are great little bits of information to hear from the artist, because next time you go visit the sculpture, you can say, hey, did you know? Or if you look closely, you can see. I mean, I think those are all great things.
I think it's precious. One other crazy little thing was my brother-in-law, who was the minister that married John and I. He happened to be visiting at the time that I was finishing up with Nellie McClung and Emily Murphy, and he very nicely put the wedding ring on Emily Murphy's finger, and he was more thrilled than anybody in the whole world. He just loved that. So that was a family story that was told quite often.
All right, that's fantastic. So back to you, Mom. I was thinking about you being the first funder and your feeling about wanting to make sure that women were honored in art. And why do you think art was the most appropriate, proper commemoration for the famous 5?
Well, Roxanne, as you know, because that's your degree, is art history, so you do know about that. But art and various forms of art have long been a means which we remember significant people and events from the past, both good and bad. It's proven to be very effective in telling the stories of those who went before us, as well as passing down important lessons learned in history. Barbara, I'm so happy to hear of your ideas, your motivation, your inspiration for the sculptures. And I have, as I think the 5 funders have, or the 7 now with Roxanne and Jane, we have small teacups that you fired for us also. It's in a place of honor at my house, and every time I look at it, I smile because the monuments were so impressive and so extremely beautiful and so very large.
Yes.
I mean, you have them larger than life, which they were, and I just so appreciate your inspiration, you sharing that with everyone today. And I know that the people watching this program will now look at those monuments in a different light because of what you put into it. You put in your heart and soul into what you've done, and you feel that when you go and see them. At least I do, and my family does.
That's lovely. Thanks, Anne.
I when we showed the picture of the pencil sketch of Barbara's idea for the sculpture, I was going to ask Barbara, I mean, could you have imagined that pencil sketch turned into 1 1/4 life-size bronze figures, 5 women, multiple pieces of furniture, and the bronze method, the lost wax bronze method used is as old as the 3rd millennium BC, which very little changes in the process, an enormous undertaking. And I know it was 2 years of your time too. But you had mentioned to me one of your favorite moments in all those bronze art steps was when the figures were welded together. However, they were still unfinished, but they were there and they were welded together. Why was this moment so important to you?
It's an amazing route that these pieces of sculptures go through. And the one very last step before they get into the patina and things, as you probably know, the sections that go through the bronze process are quite small. They don't just take the big bodies and dip them into bronze, but each part is sort of cut into sections about 2 feet by 2 feet. When these are finally in their bronze stage, with all the extra pieces cut off it, and it's just the panel of say the shoulder or something. So when they're ready to be welded together, the skill of the foundry is amazing. What they do is weld them together, but they also continue to keep the marks of the artist in mind, so that you rarely see any of the weld cuts. With a good foundry, it's just invisible. And so it's almost like watching a jigsaw puzzle. You watch and watch, and then when it's all together, what a treat. So it was an exciting time. I like that a lot.
Well, I think we are now going to take a pause. Well, not a pause. I'd like to introduce 2 girls who are going to ask us questions. They are from the Calgary Arts Academy, and they are sisters, I believe. And let me just see. I'm not sure who is going to ask the question first, but we have Kira and Zihara, sisters that are 8 and 11 years old, and they're going to ask some questions of Barbara and Anne from the Calgary Arts.
Hi, I'm Karen, and I would like to know what inspires you.
Oh, what a lovely little wave. Thank you for that lovely question. That's a hard one. I think every artist, well, probably everybody is inspired by nature, and you take a walk in the woods or take a walk down the street, and there's just all these sort of exciting things that are happening. But really, one of my things that I like to view and that I'm inspired by is following somebody through that is indeed following their dreams. When somebody follows their dreams, it's an amazing thing, and it's wonderful if they complete it and take it to as far as they can. So watching somebody do that, I think, is one of the things that inspires me and sort of tried to help me get through my work.
Thanks, Barbara. You, Anne, what inspires you?
Well, I'm very much like Barbara. I'm a very high energy person. I can be inspired by a lot of things that I see in nature. I have a place in the mountains. The mountains, you can't be in the mountains without having them be inspirational. But also it's the other thing that really motivates me and gets me thinking about the future is women who care about other women. And as I mentioned before, they're not perfect, but they care about the life of future generations, I guess, because we're also blessed to be mothers and have nieces that we care about and people in our family that we care so dearly about. And it's, I don't know, when you think of the nature and the inspiration and how you feel, it's in your heart, it's in your soul, it's in your body. And when you give with your heart, you know that others will follow, and they do. And so women have a very warm capability to do that with others. And so I think that's what gives me so much inspiration. And that's why these sculptures were so important to me and so important to Frances Wright, who started the whole movement. It is women advocating for women in all of the right ways, and the care about our future generations. And that's why we want to remember them, be inspired by them, because they will always be, they were and they will always be inspirational.
Thanks, Anne. We have one more question from one of the sisters.
Hi, my question is, what do you remember about creating the famous 5 statues? Thank you.
What do you remember by?
Wow. Is that a question for me? Why don't you?
That is a question for you, Barbara. Yes. Little art makers. There's the 2 that are going to follow their dreams for you, Barbara.
Well, that was another good question, I must say. What do I remember? I remember that most of the time when I was in Calgary working on the sculptures, I was frightened to death I wasn't going to be able to finish them. I just had this terrible feeling. They're going back to the first question about follow your dreams and be sure you finish your work and things. Here I was stuck with my own thoughts that I had to do this. But really, I learned so much new sculpture techniques, new everything, and a whole bunch of new people that were there to help me in the foundry. And so I think that the situation was exciting. It seemed to be long at the time, but now that I go back on it, it was a short time of really excitement and fun and thrilled with the outcome.
Thanks, Barbara. I like that you used the word frightening, because when we do take on big dreams and big projects and big things, you know, we get frightened along the way. And but you know, you're right, you persevere. And I heard you tell me that you like things finished, and you did finish. You did. That was just amazing. So that's a great answer. And thank you to Kira and Zahara. Those are wonderful questions.
Lovely. Sure.
So let me see. Let's go back to you, Anne. And I was going to ask you, are you happy with the placement of the sculptures?
Well, thank you, Roxanne. And yes, I am very happy with the place of the sculptures. I think they need to be in places of prominence. And these locations, I think, convey the fact that women are valued. And we have a voice in our history, in our present, and in our future. By having these sculptures located in a public place, it reminds us of what they did, the famous five, and promote the idea and value of thinking of their contributions in their day and what they mean to us today. The art and the location help remind us of all the good that was accomplished through the famous five. And again, I said I want to recognize Frances Wright for all she did to have the sculptures in these prominent places. It wasn't easy, Frances, I remember that, but you were determined. And I'm so grateful that you didn't give up. I can't think of a more fitting location than outside of our Senate in Ottawa and in the heart of our downtown here in Calgary. These locations contribute to telling the story of the famous five, that they were advocates. They risked a lot in order to challenge the political leaders and traditions of the day with the greater good in mind. I feel very strongly about that. And every time I go by them in Calgary, and especially in Ottawa, I feel very, very proud. Thank you, Frances Wright, for persevering. You did it. You had an idea. You took it to fruition, just as Barbara did. She had her ideas. They're larger than life, and so were yours. And we're all very grateful for you for doing that. And Roxanne, to answer your question, yes, I'm very happy with where they are.
Me too. Me too. The famous five in Ottawa were originally on Parliament Hill, where Senate was. And as we know, they've been moved now because the Senate has been moved. But I remember Frances telling me at the time there was 2 queens and famous five. And I was thinking that's fantastic. All right, Barbara, could you have imagined that sculpture, and I started this before, that once was a sketch, now a 1 1/4 life-size sculpture, would be not only in Calgary and in Ottawa, but it's been on a stamp, it's been on a $50 bill, and it's now being used in our passport as on one of the pages. So the famous five sculpture has become an image that represents our country. Could you have imagined that when you were drawing that sketch?
Absolutely not. And what a thrill. I think the recognition of the famous five is important. And thank goodness they were on the 50 and in the passport and on the stamp. It really is an honor for them. And I'm just the messenger. I just happen to be the one that was able to get the whatever they want, the image settled in for the 3 areas. And really, a big treat, but you have to tell the story with the famous five deserved it.
Fantastic. Yeah, I just, I'm also thrilled that the work, well, you know, your sculpture, you're right, it's the famous five, but it's also the sculpture, the vision that you created. And what we do know that the famous five had different beliefs that were associated with their times. They have done some wonderful things for women, but we know that there were also, you know, some things that we look back now and we see are not appropriate. They haven't withstood the test of time. And what would you say about that? I mean, you knew that, yeah. So how do you move with that idea going forward?
Well, Roxanne, I think you left a bit of a hard question for your mother. But really, you know, when we look back, we realize the information that was available at the time, and the people made the decisions on that information. Now we are so blessed with the way we can talk to the rest of the world in seconds. We have more knowledge at our fingertips to make these decisions. But I know these women made the decisions that they thought were right at the time, and that's what we have to remind ourselves for that. But they wanted to right a wrong in the society. They set out to do it, and they did it. And so if we keep that in the forefront of our thinking, we will celebrate them rather than criticize. It's always easy to see after the fact. And of course, that's where I think the famous five maybe have their critics. But I think that the decisions that we make now are easier for us because they will stand the test of time. And when we see these monuments, they'll just help us to remember that our decisions and choices have consequences for the future. So that's what I would answer to your difficult question, Roxanne.
Thanks, Mom. Yes, and you know, I've heard you say to me too that the idea that, you know, when I make a decision, let me think about the future. Will it withstand another 100 years, the decisions I'm making? So that's again your wise guidance. Before we started our conversation, I included 4 photographs, and one of them was all 5 women's red waxed heads in a line, and red wax is part of the bronze process. And there's many, many bronze processes. But what intrigued me about this photograph was Barbara's immense talent at drawing out each individual person, drawing out the human qualities and characters. And I just wanted to ask you about that, about, you know, shaping the faces. You made them all individuals. And if you could just, was it fun to pull human beings out of clay and bronze and wax?
Absolutely. It was fun. And I have to thank Frances for I think that was your photo, Frances, that you took the chance of grabbing the 5 sitting there in their little wax forms and their big wax forms and took the picture. So I think it really does say volumes in that each of them are different. When you're faced with enlarging a piece of, even from life size, and making it larger, it's pretty, it's a handy way to think that, well, if this nose is 5 inches long, I can make this one 5 inches long and this one 5. I mean, you just cookie cutter your way through and they all look alike. So it was very important that I got as much material and as many photos of the actual 5 to give them their personalities and their facial features that fit. Quite some fun.
You were very successful. We just have a few minutes left. I think 4 minutes maybe left within our discussion of the 3 of us. Is there anything that either one of you would like to add that we haven't touched on today that's in your mind? Barbara, you have?
One of the things that comes to mind, and I really was reminded when I was going through some of the files in the last few days, about really how much fun it was and how the Famous Five contributed to with their visits, their spontaneous and their planned visits to the foundry. And it was really something. And many of the time we'd get a phone call that Frances had some pretty powerful women from Ottawa coming through to see things, or they were always powerful. Knowing Frances, they had a reason to be showing this. But when they would come, and occasionally Frances would come with balloons and coffee and donuts and just a lovely party. Well, you can imagine the foundry, these hard workers that were there with all their equipment and drilling and dirty and covered with filings and things. All of a sudden, there they were sweeping up and trying to prepare a foundry for a lovely tea party. So those things were. The other thing that I must think about was most every time that somebody came, I gave them a piece of clay so that they could add it to somewhere on the sculpture, whether it made it through looking like a piece of gum stuck on a sculpture, or whether it was blended in. But they knew it was there. I knew it was there, and I think it really added to the connection that the visitors had with the Famous Five.
Oh, it's fantastic, Barbara. I remember that as being one of those experiences that I gained from being a donor to the Famous Five Foundation, and the trip to the foundry was exciting to me.
Good.
It was called Bronze Art, and it was run by Vaughn Stewart, and a wonderful foundry. And I've heard you say you loved being in your overalls and you loved being on the ladder, and that sometimes there'd be 10 plus people moving around and making the art. So I was thrilled that day. I remember that fondly. And
it was hard to give that up. I'd love to be in that same atmosphere again.
well, maybe you can do it again. Maybe not 5 women, but
I think not.
yeah. I believe it was 2 years of your life for the first sculpture, full-time making that piece of art. And then I know it was another year for the Ottawa sculpture.
That's probably the time, yeah.
Yeah. Anne, do you have anything else you would like to add before we?
Yes, well, I would just like to tell Barbara how thrilling it was for me to get that little piece of material and trying to decide where to put it. I did put it on Nellie McClung's hemline. I've been in the fashion business, or was still in the fashion business, and I was noticing the hemlines and how they change with time and years. And so I added my little piece to the hemline that's almost to her ankles. I thought, we got to watch, because one day we're going to have those hemlines raised again as we do now. And I thought that was a fitting place to put it. But that was such a thoughtful thing you did for the people that had the opportunity to go and see the way you were working and what you were working with. It truly was inspirational for all of us also to see those bronzes being made and the magnitude of what you did. So, Barbara, I'm in awe of your art. But Roxanne, I think I should ask you a question, and maybe I'll make it a tough question. What do you think about that as we exit? And you're in the hot seat now, so I'm going to ask you, Roxanne, what would you think that they would be doing, the Famous Five, if they were alive today? What would they be doing? Do you like
wearing orange shirts? Wearing orange t-shirts this week. That's what they would be doing.
I think you'd be right about that, Roxanne.
There you go. It's my turn to turn over to Frances Wright. I want to thank you both, Anne and Barbara, for your time and how exciting it's been to talk to you and develop these discussions and questions. And I really enjoyed it. Thank you very much.
Hello.
Frances.
Yes, well, this has been absolutely fascinating. And while I thank you for all your compliments, I want everyone to know that the word Frances means Frances and friends. And aren't I lucky to have all these amazing friends and colleagues and partners? Absolutely fantastic. In Ottawa, we had a fabulous group of women the Ottawa Famous Five chapter, which continues today, and it was led by Isabel Metcalf and also Janice Levy. So there were groups in Ottawa and groups here in Calgary helping us to make the Famous Five come to life. Of course, primarily concentrating on the statue, but there were other events that we organized to celebrate the 70th anniversary here in Calgary, and then the 71st anniversary of the Paterson's case in Ottawa. You've met today Anne and Roxanne McCaig, and the third person, of course, is Jane McCaig, who was the first donor, and our thanks, of course, to the three of them for seeing the dream and helping to make the dream come true. As Roxanne mentioned earlier, as important as a leader is, it's the first person to support them that also makes a dream come true, and then others follow because they validate the idea. And I would like to also express my thanks on behalf of the foundation to the other four funders of the monument. They were Lena Ann Hannon and her family, who agreed to contribute so that we recognize that what Lena Ann did by her Betty shops across the prairies was bring together people of different faiths. And that's very important, that we talk about important religious and spiritual issues, as well as the more mundane things of life. The third sponsor was Kiki Delaney, an incredible financier, who said, I would like to donate on behalf of women's financial independence. The fourth donor was a senator, a woman of color, an immigrant, and a fashion designer, manufacturer, PhD historian, and that was the Honorable Vivian Poy. And the fifth donor had just started her enterprise, which now is a national enterprise, and that is Heather Reisman of Indigo Books. So those are the five women who came forward, plus two, to fund the Women Are Persons Monument. And if Anne hadn't insisted the daughters be involved, we wouldn't have had the other stories as to why it's important that we recognize the Famous Five and other women as nation builders. So all that's left for me in terms of questioning is to ask the lightning round of questions of our three guests. And the first question, and I think I've sent it to the three of you, I would just like a one-word answer, please, to this statement. When I'm confused, I ... So Barbara, when are you confused, what do you do?
I actually try to get physically busy with an art piece. It sounds strange because at one point I thought I don't want to do it ever again. After the Famous Five, I needed a rest, but really it is. I'm either sketching or I'm making small molds of something. That's probably keeps me out of trouble and my life becomes a little happier after it.
Thank you. And Anne, when you're confused, what do you do?
I call my family, my kids, Roxanne, John, and Jane. What should I do about this? Your mother's confused.
Nice. Well, you have raised them well, so I'm sure they give you the right answer. And Roxanne, so when you're confused, what do you do?
I go for a walk.
Excellent. Clear your head. Now the question is, when I'm scared, what do I do? Barbara?
I think I mentioned earlier that I was scared doing the Famous Five. And once again, I took to art. And if you're scared, just fall right in and just make it work.
And that you sure did, Barbara. And when you're scared, what do you do?
Well, I talk to my dog and I really get the right answers because they're all answers that I really like. And he's very cooperative. That's what I would do.
Excellent. Thank you. Roxanne?
I like to be alone and meditate.
Huh. All very helpful answers. And the third one is when I'm sad. Barbara?
Well, I would hate to say that I take a drink because it's not quite true, but it sounds like a good idea. No, I think just start just living, do something, keep busy, and sometimes all that stuff just goes away.
Yeah. And your answer when you're sad, what do you do? Please.
Well, I think now I'm going to call Barbara.
Perfect. Anytime, man.
That
Anytime.
sounds like a very happy place to be when you're sad. But I do go to a happy place, and I have a happy place in the mountains, and that seems to be my place of reflection, and it does work. It does work. But so do you, Barbara. Yours works too.
Good.
And Roxanne?
Yes, I go to music, and I like to dance. So I could be dancing in my own living room.
Well, thank you all. We're going to repeat these answers in different ways in the Famous Five newsletter on the website, so people can draw inspiration and comfort from your answers. They'll know that there are a variety of different ways to help us through these challenging times. Well, dear friends, we're at a tea party, and so I hope you brought your teacup or your mug, because it's now time to make some toast, to have some toast. As you saw with the three today, women very openly share, and we say when we're scared or frightened or confused, and as a way of helping one another get over these obstacles. And that's what we're hoping that you are doing today by listening to these three amazing women with their responses. So our first toast is to Barbara Paterson. And all of you have seen what a joy it is to work with Barbara, and what an amazing accomplishment, as Roxanne has said, from just the sketch plus text. She sent us quite a few words explaining how she was going to operationalize her sketch to what has become the two most beloved monuments in Canada. Oh, sorry, Barbara, the three, because I should include Emily. Oh no, probably I should include the little girl and the dog. But Barbara, you have such a way of bringing your statues alive. And I just want to take a moment before we toast you to tell you that shortly after the statues were installed on Parliament Hill, I received a phone call from a guard, a security guard, who said they were watching their screens one night, and fairly regularly after dark, a woman or a couple of women would start walking slowly up to the Famous Five. And the guards wondered, should they go out and help them? What should they do? Because the women very quickly started to cry. But they said, no, the women know they're safe on the hill. And so they let them either sit on Emily's chair or go and hug Louise and Irene, Nellie, and Henrietta, and talk to them. And after about 10 minutes or so, the women then would sort of straighten their shoulders, look the Famous Five in the eye, and then walk away much more confidently. That was not something we had intended when we asked you to create the monument, Barbara. But it is very clear that you brought the Famous Five to life. And you also turned them into good listeners and sources of comfort. And so now, ladies, women of Canada, if we would raise our teacups in a toast. Oops, I've got my wrong teacup. As Anne was mentioning, Barbara made lovely little teacups for us out of bronze. Thank you, Anne, for mentioning that. And so a toast, please, to one of the amazing sculptors of the world, to Barbara Paterson, the sculptor of the Women Are Persons Monument. To Barbara.
Barbara.
I'm speechless, would you believe? Amazing. Thank you, Frances. What a lovely, lovely toast. Thank you.
Well, everything we had hoped for the Famous Five monument, you brought to life, Barbara. And as Roxanne has mentioned, and other people then have used your image in ways, again, we never anticipated. And we're very grateful to everybody who takes it upon themselves to further the story of the Famous Five and inspire other girls and women to be leaders too. But as we know, a very important part of this monument coming to life was Anne McCaig. that Anne McCaig listened to our story about what we wanted to do. And it very much is a we. It's not just Frances Wright. Frances was the lucky person that got to meet all these people and go and tell them about what the Famous Five Foundation wanted to do. But we approached Anne, and Anne said, I'm interested in your project. And it just filled us with such joy, with such confidence. And not only did you say yes, but you gave us advice along the way, which was much, much appreciated. So ladies, please raise a cup, a tea, a mug in toast to the first follower, the first funder and her daughters, but to Anne McCaig, to Anne McCaig. Thank you. And today's pink tea flowed really beautifully. I'm sure you found it entertaining as well as informative. And that's because Roxanne, our host today, really embraced this project, both from 25 years ago when we first talked about doing the monument, and every step thereon. Roxanne has been an important supporter of it. And in preparation for this event today, she spent many hours figuring out how best to draw out the information, to prioritize the information. And so Roxanne, if you want a new career, this might be one for you. So a toast, please, to Roxanne, as a superb host of the virtual pink tea. To Roxanne.
Roxanne.
And our last toast of the moment, of course, goes to the other amazing role models that we met today. That's Gina Jordan from Enbridge and the Calgary Arts Academy girls, Ziara and Kira. So to our future leaders, to Ziara and Kira, and our current leader, Gina. Thank you. So now, with my heart full of joy and appreciation, I'm going to ask that the conversationalists, our panelists, are off the screen if they're not already. And I just want to bring you quickly some Famous Five news. As you've heard, this is the beginning of Women's History Month. This is also on October 18th going to be the 92nd anniversary of the First Estates and the 25th anniversary of the Famous Five Foundation. And so thank you to everybody who has helped make our dreams come true. Everybody helped in different ways to say, yes, it's important to recognize women as nation builders. It's important to recognize these particular women, faults and all. We need women more involved in making decisions and participating in our life. And so we have started a new program called Say Her Name. And one of the ways Say Her Name has happened, even before we started the program, was a group of Indigenous women, shortly after the unveiling on Parliament Hill, decided they would like to name 5 of their women to be Famous Five. So the Indigenous Famous Five are Mary 2X Early, Sharon Donna McIver, Yvonne Bedard, Jeanette Corbier Laval, and Sandra Lovelace Nicholas. So those are the Indigenous Famous Five. And we are very proud to say their names. And we want to say more names of women who have contributed to the building of Canada. So we're hoping you will send us the names of a woman or a group of women who you think deserve further recognition and appreciation, to recognize and inspire girls as contributors to the building of Canada, women as leaders in the building of Canada. Recently, we began a tour of the bronze maquette of the Famous Five. Barbara submitted a wax model, but we've bronzed it, and it toured to all the legislatures across Canada. And now it's going to all the post-secondary institutions. And we need your help with that. We need your help in connecting with the post-secondary institutions. If we could change the slide, please, to the bronze maquette slide, please. Thank you. And also, so what institutions should we go to in your province? Who should we be involving with these discussions? Because we will be discussing where some of the things the Famous Five believed have not withstood the test of time and how best to go forward. also, of course, funding. So we need funding. And it's next month, November the 5th, the famous 5 Friday is going to be with a military leader who now is the Vice President of the Public Health Agency of Canada. And she's backed by public demand. This is Brigadier General Krista Brody. And joining her this time to discuss perhaps her time as a military person in Bosnia and Croatia and Afghanistan will be Dr. Jean Slick, who I've just met, who's a remarkable disaster expert. She teaches about emergency measures and training and logistics at Royal Rose College. So there are so many levels for us to learn about leadership, perhaps the dangers of leadership from these two. But our last toast is to each and every one of you, because each and every one of us is a leader too. So I would like you to say in a clear, strong voice, to me, I'm a leader too. The toast, are you ready? Is to me, I'm a leader too.
Leader
too. Well, I'm sorry this famous 5 virtual pink tea is coming to a close, but next we will hear from Brianna Burt from Saskatoon and part of her famous 5 musical. And you are welcome to continue chatting in the chat room to send thanks to Barbara and Anne and Roxanne, suggest some speakers to us, enjoy Brianna's song. You can do all that, or you can change and go to a new Zoom channel, which was sent in the chat room. So you just have to click on it, or in your inbox. We sent you an email just a moment ago. And that will be a discussion further with these 3 where you can ask the questions. It will last half an hour, and it'll be up to you to be inspiring, to inspire these 3 who have inspired you. So, miigwech, thank you, merci. I look forward to seeing you on November 5th. Thank you very, very much for being with us today. A bientôt.
Hi, I'm Brianna Burt from Saskatoon. I'm going to share with you a song I wrote for the musical The Famous 5. I envision Nellie McClung singing it, and she is holding a mock parliament disputing why men should have the vote. And in this song, I also have the men disputing why women should have the vote. And I called this song Women. Women, how I love women. But who are these women who are on a mission? Ladies can't be politicians. They haven't got quite enough smarts or the right body parts to make decisions. Women, how I love women. My wife has opinions, it's only confusion. Kiss 'em, you won't have to listen. You've got to just keep on your toes with these clever does that we call women. Women will make it very clear you are wasting your breath and you don't belong here. Women have voices like you men. If you tell us we can't, we won't stop till we can. All right, men, you think you're the only ones who can play this game? You men, young men and old men, can't trust or believe them. Need women to lead them. Leave them at home, it's no question. Giving them rights is a joke. Men shouldn't vote in the election. Women, you men, how I love women. You don't know women. They're cooking and cleaning. I don't believe them. Their end and their beginning. Demeaning, playing, praying the game, and I'm winning. God stop me from sinning. If we let one woman in, well then they will win. There'll be a million. We've got to get one woman in, and I, gentlemen, will be the leader. If we let one woman in, we must listen to it.